I used to think my life was random. The emotions, the patterns, the cycles, it all felt like it was just happening to me until I realized that it wasn't random at all. It was running on a system, my system, a system that I had never looked at and couldn't control until I understood it. Today, I'm going to walk you through what exactly this system is, what it's made of, and why it keeps generating the same results, even when you change the strategy, in the exact 6-step process to rewrite it at the root level. Once you see this, you simply can't unsee it. And so for myself, I kept noticing something within myself that I really couldn't understand or really explain. Different situations would constantly produce the same emotions, different contexts, but same behavioral output, different people, different circumstances, different stakes, and somehow the same version of me kept showing up. I'd do the work, I'd adjust the strategy, I'd bring more awareness, more intention, more effort, but I kept getting the same old loop playing over and over again. Just like a script that runs on a software program, it kept going on, and I really didn't have any chance or opportunity to change it because I didn't even know that it was there. And the thing that really got to me is I really didn't understand why this was happening to me. Like, I could see what was happening and what was going on, but I didn't fully understand why. The main question was, why does this keep happening to me even though I want this to change? And I was working with a buddy of mine, and for this example purposes, we'll call him Marcus. So Marcus had been on the personal development journey for many years, and he took it very serious. Like, it wasn't something that was done casually. He'd done the inner work. He'd understood the vocabulary, the language, the frameworks, the self-awareness. And so he could articulate his patterns with precision. He could identify his triggers in real time. And every significant decision that he made, the same pattern was being ran. The emotional reactivity before any high stakes moments. He'd experience a pull towards smaller choices right at the edge of something bigger. And so there was a massive gap between what he knew and what he actually did with it. And I told him the reason why that he kept going through this is because he was trying to change the output without ever touching the system internally that was producing it. You see, your life isn't random. It's consistent with your internal code. And this is really the code here that you're running. You have a specific input, and then depending on your perception, how you label that event, that circumstance, that situation, that essentially creates an emotion. If you think something is good, it's going to give you a positive emotion. If you think something is bad, a problem, an issue, it's going to give you negative emotion. And then that's going to come into your identity in terms of how you see yourself based off of all these previous components here, right? Then you're going to take an action, or you're not going to take any action at all. And then this is going to create your reality. Because ultimately here, reality is not what happens to you, right? Because the input here, this can be anything, okay? Anything can happen here, and it happens to the best of us, right? Whatever is going to happen, happens, okay? And this is just an event. It's neutral. So it's not what happens, it's what your system does with it, right? And so if you understand how this whole process works, this system, then you'll be able to really work with it, understand it, and have the right internal system running so that it's getting you your desired reality, right? Instead of giving you a reality that you don't want, and instead, when you become familiar with this, you can change all of the different ways that you interact, right, with this entire system. You can rewrite the code so that you get the outcomes, the reality that you actually want and that you have decided. And with the case with Marcus, you see, the reason why he was stuck is because he knew all of this. He knew exactly all of these different components, this whole system that was being ran, but he never took the actual action to make a difference, right? You could know everything and anything in the world about the secrets of the universe, but if you don't put that information to use in the real world, externally, then it's all for naught. You're going to be the wisest person in the world that does nothing, right? So it's important for you to realize that knowledge, information, awareness is just one part. It's like draw a little circle here, okay? It's just one part of it, right? Think about the masculine and the feminine, the yin and the yang. You have one side, you have awareness, okay? This is execution. If you don't have the execution, but you just have the awareness, then it's incomplete. You need to have both. You need to be able to integrate them both together. And for many years, this is a problem that I went through as well. Like, I would always look at the next book, the next podcast, the next guru, the next information that I could take in and learn and, find out something different, something unique that I didn't know previously. And it would be good information for me to learn, and I would feel great and motivated right after. But then I was like, okay, what then do I do with this? And I hadn't really realized that all this knowledge, all this information that I was accumulating was great and important. But if I didn't use it in the real world, then it was just useless information. It was all for naught. Now, I want to go back to the Reality OS, and this is essentially the entire system that's producing your reality. And this is something that is naturally occurring in every single situation and circumstance in your life. You're always getting inputs from your information that you're absorbing through all your different senses, through smell, taste, touch, hearing, seeing, all of these different things, right? You're getting experiences, inputs, and your perception and your emotion and your identity and your action are all leading to your reality. This is an automatic system that runs no matter what. Like, if you realize and understand that this is what's going on, you can change all of this, right, to get your desired reality. Now, the way that I want you to think about this is just think about AI. With AI, when an input goes in, right, let's say you're having a chat with like ChatGPT or Claude or any of these different AI tools. You have an input that goes in terms of you ask it a question, then the system processes it, okay, through its neural networks, all the different training data, right? And then from here, you get output. This is a system. Let's go like this over here and go this and this, and then we'll go right here, AI, okay? This is essentially how AI works in terms of a system. And it's very similar to the reality operating system of inputs, perception, emotion, identity, action, reality. You put an input into AI, ask it a question, it processes it through its neural networks, all of its data, training data, and you get an output, you get a response. There's no like error, there's no issue here. It's just a simple system that is running. And the biggest thing here that I really want you to take away from this is that this is not random. Like, reality is not random, okay? As we just went through the AI example, okay? It happens automatically every single time. When you are asking it a question, talking to it, processes through all its training data, output AI, okay? Always, no matter what. This is the same for the human experience, for reality. Input, perception, emotion, identity, action, and your reality. And oftentimes, it's not your desired reality. It's just like random reality. Then we all wonder why things keep happening to us, why we keep going through the same issues, the same problems, same struggles, like why our life is a certain way and not another way that we have been trying to manifest and think about and writing in our vision boards. Is because the system is running automatically, whether you know it or not and realize it. But there's a way to fix this so that you can rewrite this code and get your actual desired reality. So let's go back to the board here. And, we talked about this whole experience. And that ultimately, it's not about what happens to you. It's what your system does with it. It's what your operating system is doing with all of that information, right? The inputs here. So let me erase this, and I want to write down and go over these 5 components here: the perception, emotion, identity, and action. So let's start with number 1 here, okay? This is the perception. This is essentially the filter, okay? Think about, like, there's a little circle, you know, like those little filters that you use for, like, let's say you're making spaghetti, right? And you are boiling the noodles, and you have the noodles that are already boiled. This is a horrible drawing, but I want you to understand. Maybe let's do a filter through, like, our car filter. Very simple. I want you to get the analogy and understanding. So car filter, okay, it's collecting all this dust, all this stuff, all these things, and then it's passing through nice and clean air, right? So this is the filter that you are using through your perceptions to give you exactly what you believe and think about a certain situation, okay? Just think about it. 2 people can experience the same input, the same event, but the perception is different. Here, perhaps they catch negative perceptions, and then the other person catches positive perceptions. And so no matter what the input is, perception is a choice, okay? So number 2, emotions. This is the signal, okay? And the signal is based off of your perception. Let's say you have something happen to you. Simple example I like to use all the time is you get into a car accident. Simple fender bender, somebody rear ends you, okay? You can naturally, and you're likely going to experience frustration, maybe a little bit of uneasiness, maybe a little bit of fear, okay? Understandable. Now, the issue is where you're letting that take over, okay? Take over your entire day, week, month, and you're letting it get to you, because oftentimes it's more of the emotions that we're experiencing and the thoughts. It's more of like the thought of the event itself and the circumstance that's causing the stress, the issues, the emotional spikes, but not the event itself, right? Like in the beginning, you're supposed to feel a little bit of that emotion, and it's okay to feel that. Like, man, I'm frustrated. That sucks. And then simultaneously, you're like, okay, it is what it is. What can I do about it? Nothing. I'm glad I'm alive, right? I'm grateful I'm alive. But then as you move on, and if you let it get to you, you keep thinking about it. Man, this person, why did he get in front of me? Or why did he hit me? Why did he, hit my car? Now my car is, going to cost tons in damage, all these different things, right? So all of those different thoughts are the ones that are likely causing you the actual stress itself and the issue. So the emotions are coming essentially based off of your interpretations to those events that are happening in your life, okay? So you don't want it to take over. And then number 3, identity. This is the core code. And I like to liken this to like you are running a computer, okay? You have a desktop, laptop, whatever it may be. What is that main operating system? It's typically going to be Windows 11. For whatever reason, you're running like a Linux, like a desktop server, but mostly it's going to be a Windows 11, Windows 10, or like a Apple iOS, right? So this is the root code and the core code, right? Root code that is essential to everything. This is what is giving the world everything about who you are. This is the character that you're playing in the story, in the movie. Like you have decided knowingly, and really most of the time unknowingly, that you're playing a certain character in the movie. And this is the strongest thing here, that where you can change the identity, okay? Change this, and the whole entire system rewrites itself, because your identity, if your identity says that you're somebody who doesn't take issue to minor things or sees things from the lens of like, you know what, everything's going to be all right, and you have a positive mental attitude and that I'm going to figure it out, then no matter what happens here at the input stage, it doesn't matter what happens, because you're always going to interpret it from a positive lens. You're always going to feel perhaps some emotion, but you're going to notice it, control it, acknowledge it, release it, and then move on from that, right? And so then your identity sets all of this, and you take certain actions that are going to get you your desired reality, so that you are experiencing something that you actually want, right? And getting the outcomes that you want, versus having this just be random, which most people, unfortunately, have random reality, and they're unaware as to why, right? But remember, awareness is just one part of the puzzle, right? One piece of the puzzle. It's one half of the pie, right? Awareness, here's execution, which actually leads us to number 4, which is behavior. This is the execution layer. And your actions are the direct output of this entire invisible system, right? Like, you don't know that this system is running. You can't physically see this, like, in reality. You can see the reality of it all, but you can't see this like written down somewhere. You get the ability to see it here in real time because I put it together, and most people just don't even know about this, but like, you're not really seeing this internally, right? This is something that happens naturally on autopilot, but you get to choose your actions and your behavior based off of your identity. So let's go with number 5, reality. This is the actual output, okay? This is essentially what you call your life, your reality in terms of the external world, your circumstances, your patterns, all of it. And all of your life is generated through all of these different inputs here, okay? You have a specific input of information, experience, circumstance, event. It's filtered through your perception of how you look at it, whether it's positive or negative. You get an emotion, positive one or negative one, and you're aware of this or not, which then is going to filter through your identity, and then you decide to take an action or not. Now, I know I'm going through this multiple times with you because I want you to really understand this and really acknowledge that this is running, and that so that you can change this. Because once you change the system, your reality changes automatically. It's night and day difference, right? Like, obviously there's a lot of work here to be done in terms of your perception, your emotions, but obviously the first thing is just awareness, knowing what's running the system, how it's running, so that you can rewrite it at the root level. Now, how do we change this system so that we get the desired reality that we actually want, right? Well, let me erase this here, and I want to give you the actual system, and we'll leave this up here in terms of the reality OS that most people are going through, okay? But what we want to be running is this system, but in different rotation. So we're going to start with identity, okay? Our system's going to start with identity, and then it's going to go into perception, then emotion, action, and then we have the result, okay? Which is the result, desired reality, okay? Now, what changes here? What is the biggest thing here? Identity. We need to be operating from identity, because when we decide that we're going to be operating as, let's say, a successful entrepreneur, a successful individual, does a successful entrepreneur see things as always negative, or do they see things as just opportunities? Do they see challenges as negative, or is just like, possibility in terms of learning something new, getting information, getting feedback, right? Do they acknowledge that things happen and then they take a mindset of like, okay, what can I do here? If there's nothing I can do, why am I going to use emotion? Why am I going to spike up and get all hyped up about something that I have zero control over? A successful entrepreneur is going to be like, okay, what is the situation? What can I do about it? If there's absolutely nothing I can do right now, then I'm going to put it to the side, and then I'm going to do everything that I can to try to become a positive result, right? Outcome, whatever it may be. But I'm not going to waste energy, emotion on something that I have zero control over. Remember, as I said earlier, things that happen to us, events, circumstances that we have labeled as negative, it's more often than not the thought of those things that are causing us stress. So when we start with identity, everything changes. We lead with this, because then now we're not somebody who sees things from a negative perspective. We see things from a positive mental attitude, which then creates emotions that are neutral, but still have a little bit of a spike, like a small little spike, right? Like baseline emotion right here, okay? Get a low spike, go down. Get a low spike, go down, right? Versus most people, emotion, get all fired up, and then it goes down, and then they have a huge spike, and it goes down. It's like there's no ability to really be in the middle. It's just super drastic, right? Like you have emotional highs, you have emotional lows, like you get all fired up, you get excited, and then, something bad happens, and then you reach super low. Like almost a bipolar sense of like, 1 minute you can just be fired up, the world's a beautiful, amazing place. Next minute, something happens to you, somebody cuts you off, and you're fired up, and it maybe affects you for like days. Like, unfortunately, that's most people. And it is what it is, right? Because they just don't know, they're not aware. But what we want to do is we want to be very neutral, okay? Have little tiny spikes. Something happens, that's great, that's amazing, celebrate for a moment, right? And then go down. Something happens, feel the emotion, acknowledge it, go back up, right? But it's very small waves, and most of the time we're neutral, okay? I would even put these smaller, like boom, 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 like that, super small. This is where you have a positive mental attitude and you acknowledging you are aware of things that are happening to you, but you're not labeling them as negative right out of the gate. You're simply looking at them as just, it is what it is. And if you don't have any control over the situation, you're not going to waste any energy. You're not going to waste any emotion on just worrying about that, right? So again, going back over here to the identity, this is the main component here, right? Because the perception is from mental positive attitude, right? And then emotion is not very high. It's very much so neutral. We get action in terms of making things happen. We get the result that we want. And now our reality is being created by choice, by desire of our own will, right? And so we're getting the desired reality that we actually want. And this is why Marcus kept getting the same results, because the loop was running on autopilot And he didn't realize identity was the one that was needing to be at the forefront of it all. And so he kept getting random results based off of all of this through his reality, because he was just simply aware of what was going on, but he didn't fix the system. It's like going to a mechanic and they're telling you, hey, this is messed up, that's messed up. If you don't fix it, your car's going to break down in a certain time frame. And then you running your car and time passes and the car breaks down and you're wondering, well, what the heck's going on here? Why is my car not working? Why is it broken down? Well, you were aware and you knew, but you did nothing about it. And so this is the something about it here. Okay. This is the whole entire system that needs to be run to get the results that you actually want in life. Now, before I show you how to rewrite the code, how to update and upgrade the system, I want to show you what actually changes when you recode your reality operating system. So let's go down here. Let's even make this a little bit smaller so I can have some room down here so you get more clarity and less confusion. And then you get clearer decisions and less overthinking. And you get intentional responses and less emotional reactivity. Just think about up here when we looked at the emotions and the perceptions. When we have the identity in place, our emotions that we're going through and experiencing via our perceptions, they're not going to be sporadic anymore, right? They're not like this. They're like this, super small, tiny little bumps. It's intentional. Like you go through something, you acknowledge the experience, the feeling, and then you move on, because sitting there worrying about something that you have zero control over does nothing for you. And then ultimately you get designed results that you have chosen instead of your life being random, less default repetition of like things just happening to you without you knowing why, right? Now, this isn't about life getting easier for you once you really update this and upgrade it and realize what's going on here, because the external variables stay the same. Just think about all those different challenges that you perhaps previously had labeled as problems and all these different things, right? Like the challenges are going to continue to be there, but what changes is the system that's processing them. And once I started working on the operating system, the same situations that I had experienced previously gave me completely different outputs, not because I had more information, but because the system that was interpreting these events completely changed. And so once you see the system, you stop reacting and you start designing. Okay, so let's walk through the recode system. This is a framework that I developed, and this is where you get to intentionally design and rewrite your reality. So let's go ahead and erase the board here. Okay, so let's go over the recode system. And this is an acronym. So we're going to go through each one of these individually. This is the reality rewrite system. So let's go over each one individually. Let's go with R. This is where you want to recognize the pattern. Before anything can change, you have to recognize and realize what pattern is being run. You have to see the loop that's running behind the scenes, not the surface level behavior, but the actual loop. And for this step, you need to ask yourself questions. What situation keeps repeating? And what am I doing in it every time? Okay? You want to see what's happening here. What are you doing? And you want to see and look back at the previous history. And something really important here that I want you to keep in mind when you're going through this question is that not only do you want to understand and realize why does this keep happening, you want to understand what is the predictable response that I keep doing and giving to the situation. And what does this response tell me about the identity that I'm running, right? Like, it's important to realize and acknowledge, okay, why is this happening? But you want to have this tell you about what your identity is that is running here based off of your predictable responses to it. Now, if we go back to Marcus, okay, let's go to Marcus here. If we go back to his situation, for him, every time he had a great opportunity that came, to his desk and came his way, he would convince himself that he wasn't ready, it wasn't the right time, he needed more information, more knowledge, more experience. So he would convince himself that he shouldn't take this opportunity because of all these different reasons. And so for him, that was the pattern that was running. And on the surface, it looked just like simple hesitation, like I'm not ready yet, he's not ready. But at the OS level, it was the OS via the identity reading these opportunities as risks, as threats. And here's the thing, a named pattern, okay, when you can name it, is something you can work with. Okay? Like, you understand what the pattern is here. It's not just hesitation for Marcus. It was the fact that his identity saw all these opportunities as threats, as risks, because his identity wasn't set as someone who is a successful entrepreneur, business owner, whatever that may be, right? That would allow him to then see those situations, those experiences, those opportunities as potential great things that could happen to him, right? So named pattern is something you can work with, and an invisible pattern runs you. Like, he had no idea that that was what was going on. He just thought, hey, I wasn't ready. It is what it is. Let me just, get this more information, more knowledge, so that next time it happens, I can be ready. But then it's a loop and he's never ready. And so when he is able to then name it, now he can make sure that he runs it versus it running him. So step one is super simple. It's just simply about naming the pattern that is running without your knowledge, without your awareness. It's just like being trapped inside of a box and you have all of these codes running on the walls and you don't understand them, that, you're not able to get out of the box because you don't know what's running. You don't know the codes, the patterns that are running on the screen. But if you can realize and understand that, hey, this pattern is this over here. This is actually my identity not being in the right place. And this is because, I see things a certain way. If you don't know what's running, you're going to be inside that box forever. So let's go to E. This is the examine the belief. Because every pattern has a belief that's running underneath it. Essentially a conclusion that the system is operating from, right? Like a belief of, I'm capable of figuring things out. I'm capable of making things happen, or I'm not capable. I'm just somebody who is just average, who's normal. And at the end of the day, it's not wrong. It's not anything wrong with being normal, being average, if that's what you want to be. But in this channel, in my content, this is for people that want to become the best versions of themselves and want to grow and expand. So for us, we want to examine the belief that is underneath it all, that is driving this pattern. And we want to ask ourselves 3 questions. So let's put this over here. Let's go number 1. What would have to be true for this pattern to make sense? What would have to be true for this pattern to make sense? Number 2, where did this belief come from? You want to trace this back to a specific person, a specific show, movie, conventional wisdom, society, wherever that came from. I know for me, I had a lot of different things growing up that I took in as gospel for my family in terms of, we can't afford this, money doesn't grow on trees, that's too expensive. And I worked through all of those, but those were things that were natural there, that were programmed, and they was just running the show. And so you need to understand and realize, figure out, and point to a specific situation, person, circumstance that essentially you can pinpoint as where this came from. And so number 3, how old was I when this was installed? Big deal here as well. Because for most of us, when we're about from 0 to 7, I said 0 to 8 actually, this is where most of the programming happens, okay? 0 to 8 years old, from our parents, from society, from all of that. And then from there, we have a good solid foundation in terms of our identity that we have essentially taken bits and pieces from our family, from shows that we're watching, all of that, from conventional wisdom, society. And so maybe this was something that was installed during this time frame here. Likely so, but it could be something that was installed maybe when you were a little bit younger, right? So pinpoint the time frame when this was installed. And for Marcus, he traced his experience of not taking on opportunities and hesitating and all of that to a specific event experience that happened early in his career. It was a public event that really went badly, but it was just one event. And the conclusion that his system drew was that high visibility, big opportunities are threats, they're exposure. And exposure is risk. And risk means potential loss of self-image. And that one conclusion that was drawn in that one moment had been running his system for years. And when you examine them, it doesn't mean to relive them. It's about understanding what happened. And one of the things you can do here is separate yourself from the event. Look at it from a third person perspective, okay? And just see it from that third person and observe. No emotions, what is it? It is what it is. One of the things for me that I've learned is at the end of the day, people are just not really care. Like they're not going to care about something after a day or so, a week. Like I think a lot of times we spend energy on like, oh, what does this person think of me? What if I said this wrong? Or what if like I came across wrong? Or maybe you were slightly embarrassed about something and all this stuff. Like most people are going to just forget that in terms of like, I'm a spectator and I see you mess up and you're maybe giving like a public speech, right? You're public speaking. I'm probably going to forget about that after the event. I'm not going to sit here and be like, man, do you remember so-and-so? He had that public speaking event and he flustered his words for a moment. Like Man, can you believe that? Like, people are not going to go through their days, their lives, continually remembering those things. So it's because people are just normally selfish, and it's understandable for them to just be more worried about their own lives than they're worried about what you did in this little mess up, this little thing that happened to you, right? In a moment's instance. Like, think about it. Things that you thought about and that maybe stuck with you for like weeks, months. Like, man, I can't believe this happened to me, or I said this, or I acted this way. And that you let that draw your life force energy, your thinking, in terms of letting it affect you. But that person that you interacted with, were involved with, or that whole experience, like, those people, they're not ever even thinking about that. It's not even a thought in their mind. So it's often where we are ourselves the ones causing the pain and suffering, because we're continually running these things. And remember, I said it's often the thought of something rather than the actual event itself that is causing us the stress. Okay, so let's go to C. Change the meaning. So let's go like this. Okay. Changing the meaning is the biggest thing here. This is where I was mentioning earlier that we all get to decide what things mean to us in terms of event circumstances. And this step right here in terms of changing the meaning is really the most underestimated, because we fail to realize oftentimes that we get to decide what things mean. We're just meaning making machines, right? This happens, that happens, this circumstance, happened to us, this event. Only us gets to decide what that means to us. It can mean something else to somebody else. That doesn't matter. What does it mean to us? And for Marcus's situation, his whole mishap that he had where, he was doing a public speaking event and he messed up, that didn't mean that he wasn't capable. It just simply meant that he was underprepared in a very high pressure situation. And that's it. It's really all it is. Like, that's done. It's just, I was underprepared in a very high stakes situation. Marcus was giving a public speaking event and he messed up. It is what it is. Because when you can change that meaning, your anxiety, your depression, your stress, all of the above just eliminates. It goes away, because remember, I want to harp on this so many times. It's always about the thought of something that is actually giving you more stress than the event itself. So when you can change the meaning, the tension, the stress, the friction, all of that dissolves. The whole meaning that he had in terms of he is not good with big opportunities or high visibility opportunities that come my way. It was simply an interpretation. And his awareness of it now, he gets to change it and update it to a different interpretation that suits him, that empowers him. And for something like this, I would actually write it, like physically write this out for yourself in terms of, if you're going through a situation and you're looking to recode this, right? Like, this is the whole process and the system that I'm teaching you and walking you through. So when you're going through this yourself, write it out and say the old meaning, and then say why it's inaccurate. You can say this out loud, because actually words are very powerful. And when you can say this out loud, it really helps to really ingrain this. And then say the new meaning, the one that's actually grounded in the facts of what really happened. This isn't affirmation work. This is meaning surgery. Like, you're literally making it so that you are installing, you're cutting up in terms of, like, think about surgery, right? You're cutting something up, you're removing something in terms of, let's say, a tumor, and you're installing, let's say, fresh new cells. And so you change the meaning and you get a different emotional signal. And when you change the emotional signal, you get a completely different behavior. Okay, so let's go to number 4, the O. Let's override the identity. And so for this, we want to essentially override your existing identity that has given you these specific circumstances, reality, experience that you have now, right? Like, the reality that you're experiencing is because you have an identity that is seeing yourself a certain way, and then thus experiencing the world, reality, in a certain way. And oftentimes it's not what you want. So we want to override that. And we want to ask ourselves, who is the version of me that navigates this naturally? Okay. And when you're thinking about this, this is not like an affirmation. This is a full-fledged identity statement, present tense, and it needs to be anchored in evidence that your nervous system can actually believe. Now, for Marcus, his specific identity statement was, I'm somebody who takes high visibility action because I've already proven that I can recover from difficulty, adapt under pressure, and grow through exposure. Now, notice how that statement is not just wishful thinking. It's very precise. It's a new identity that is anchored in real existing evidence, because the nervous system doesn't accept statements that it reads to be as fiction. The new identity has to be credible, not just aspirational. So right here, you want to install an identity statement, not goal statement, because with goals, they simply just change your behavior, and identity changes the entire system. Let's go to step 5. So this is the D. We want to design new behavior, because identity without behavior is just intention, and intention doesn't recode the OS. And this is the rule here. Very, very important here. 1 aligned action every day, non-negotiable. This is a non-negotiable here. 1 aligned action every single day, no matter what. Because here's the thing. You need to have this all work together in terms of rewriting the system. Your identity, you're going to override it in terms of what you have right now, but you need to have your nervous system aligned and credible, right? So that it can believe and read that you are actually serious and you're real about your new identity. And this is through your aligned action every single day. Small little things. Do something and act from the version of me that's navigating this naturally, right? The override the identity, this question here. How would that future version of you, that version of you that is this new identity, what small little micro action would they take today, tomorrow, the next day? What does that look like? Because it's going to accumulate. It's going to build up over time. And then one day you're going to be like, man, I'm a whole different person here. That's how you want to go about that. And so for Marcus, every single week, every day, he would take 1 aligned action that was consistent with his new identity, whether it was a new email sent to a cold prospect, or to actually look at opportunities more deeply and maybe, dip his toes, dip his feet into this new opportunity that came across his desk, or maybe talk to somebody in terms of his network about something that they could do together, right? Partnership, things like that, that kind of moved him outside of his comfort zone, his own kind of internal box that he was staying within. Because the behavior is what gives the credibility to the nervous system, right? I mentioned that this all needs to work together. But if you're not taking this action here, new behavior, so that you can override the new identity, then you're going to know all of this. You're going to do all of this here, these 3 steps. Okay. And it's going to work. You're going to get some results, but it's going to be incomplete. Okay. You need to take new behavior, aligned actions, so that your nervous system reads it as credible. Okay. So let's go to the final one here. This is the E. You want to embody consistently. So essentially, this is the finish line. You've crossed the finish line, but it's not a moment. It's a simple crossing. And you'll know that you have crossed it when you're starting to take actions and doing things, and it's really low effort. It just happens naturally, right? Like you have crossed the threshold of where before the micro actions, I know they're small, but even still, there's still going to be a little bit of hesitancy, a little bit of butterflies, a little bit of nervousness, but then after a while, that all goes away and it just starts running on its own. And when the old patterns show up, the new ones override it automatically. And this is all being done before you consciously are aware of it and intervening. It's just like it's already internally programmed. And so for Marcus, now that these new opportunities would come his way, whether he decided to take it on or to pass on it based off of doing his initial due diligence, examination, looking at the risk reward and deciding that it wasn't something for him to take on, there was no friction, there was no tension. And this was because his nervous system, through all those different micro actions, had accepted this new way of being, this new signal. And here's one of the biggest things that I want you to keep in mind with this. When you're doing this, your old code is not going to just disappear. But what happens is it just simply loses authority as the new code accumulates evidence through consistent action, and it becomes just what runs by default. So let's recap this entire system. Recode. You want to recognize the pattern. What is the situation that keeps repeating here? And you want to look at what exactly is happening there on a repeated, consistent basis. You want to examine the belief. What belief did this bring me to have this type of interpretation, right? And it's typically going to be through years 0 through 8 when you are most absorbing information from your parents, from society, and then change the meaning, change the interpretation of what actually the event means to you, in terms of how you see the world, how you see an event, whether positive or negative. Override the new identity. This is where you want to think about the version of you that navigates those situations naturally, without any tension, any friction. And then design new behavior, one aligned action every day, and having it be non-negotiable, like it's compounding. And then you want to embody consistently, embody this new identity, right? See through their eyes. Think about what that version of you does on a consistent basis, how they see the world, right? All of these different things are going to be important for you to really make this whole system work, and then ultimately embody this so that your reality gets rewritten, because you're rewriting the code that's giving you the reality that you actually want. You see, Marcus spent years trying to change his life. More awareness, more insights, more frameworks, and the same loops kept running. Not because he wasn't trying, it was because he was editing the output while the system producing it stayed untouched. I spent more time than I like to admit doing the same thing, thinking that if I just understood myself well enough, the patterns would stop. And they didn't. Not until I changed the system. Here's what I want you to leave with. Your life is not random. It's completely and precisely consistent with your internal code. And the moment that you understand that, you stop trying to fight your circumstances and you start redesigning the system that's generating them. You don't live in reality. You live in your interpretation of it.